last night I met someone from your wonderful state who said, when I told her I lived in Miami, she said she was sorry. Now, I think she meant that with warmth and affection, but I don't quite know that. I live in an extraordinary community, one with a potential world-important destiny for the 21st century. And you, too, are blessed in many ways. The land of enchantment, a place of mountains and mesas and deserts and forests and rivers, with a history that literally can be traced back thousands of years, yet a statehood that goes back only about a century. Your story, like Florida's, is a story of pain and progress, and at times, if we're honest with ourselves, tragedy and treachery. You have built your future on oil and gas, trade, tourism, technology. Your military bases are among the most important in the country. And if one goes to culture, does any state in the country know the importance of culture better than New Mexico? I think not. I cannot imagine this place without the music and the art and the opera and the dance and the weaving and the pottery and the jewelry. It makes you a very special place. Moreover, any state that could produce the likes of John Denver and Sid Gutierrez and Kim Stanley and Mangus Coloradus and Bill Malden and Conrad Hilton, Demi Moore, clearly is a place of interesting people and frequently a very blessed place. So I could tell you this and I could tell you more that makes New Mexico special. But then, as the late Paul Harvey would say, here's the rest of the story. You do worse than the rest of the country as a whole in college graduates. About the same, so you know, as Florida. 25% of your children grow up in the full and painful federal definition of poverty. You come close to leading this country in teen birth rate. The percentage of children in single-parent families is way toward the bottom. Very few, relatively few of your child care sites have any real evidence of brain-stimulating early learning quality. Almost exactly half of your fourth grade students fail to meet minimum standards of reading proficiency. 30% of your mothers-to-be do not receive adequate prenatal care, and a bunch of them receive no prenatal care at all. At least 85,000 of your children have no health insurance. How can this be in the richest, most generous country in the world? About 10,000 of your children each year are victims of substantiated cases of child neglect and abuse. And each year, in this land of enchantment, more than 20,000 young people move through the juvenile justice system. So my courteous self would be inclined to say, don't take this personally. But in fact, in my state and yours, you need to take this personally if ever we are to make the sort of progress that is necessary to build the best possible future for all our children and for our country. I promise you that I'm not letting myself off the hook. If I gave you the numbers for Miami and Florida, you would see they are painfully comparable to your own. But I see answers, and you've already heard the outline of this from Barbara. The answers, of course, are best found in the earliest years of a child's life, with no suggestion that the early learning years are the only learning years of one's life, but rather the investment there is the wisest. The statistic that I most like to use, the national statistic I most like to use, is this one. If 100 children leave first grade without really learning how to read, by the end of fourth grade, 88 of the 100 still are mediocre readers. This is a wake-up call for what this summit is about this morning. I want to underscore that it is not simply about providing the basics, but it is about making sure those are the highest quality, because only high quality leads to real and positive outcomes. Barbara talked about return on investment, and we know that if we ever invested $1 wisely up front, we would save at least $7 and perhaps more in money that we would not need to spend for police, for prosecution, for prison, for remediation. Now, those of you in business today know the power of investment. And none of you then should be startled by the study by McKinsey that told us if the children in our country did as well, say, as students from nations such as Finland, our economy would be 9 to 16% bigger than it is. An educated community, an educated state, an educated country is safer, more prosperous, more optimistic for everyone. And it's at least my experience that many business people who complain about the quality of graduates, high school or college, simply do not realize the path to hiring the most capable, most qualified employees begins with the child's earliest years. I live in a state, and you live in a state, where public school is the real world for 90% of the children. The wisest path to public education reform in the United States of America isn't fixing fourth grade or the 11th grade. The wisest path to genuine public education reform, to use the words of the Nobel Prize-winning economist James J. Heckman, is, quote, to improve students sent to schools. And I can absolutely promise to you that if we were ever to achieve that, the teachers in New Mexico's 477 public elementary schools would be eternally grateful, because you would have given them the ability to spend most of their time teaching and far less of their time managing and controlling and triaging. And that is the real world of public education today, I promise you. Over the years since my so-called retirement, I have come to believe the tragedy of early childhood unpreparedness is preventable. Have come to believe that community by community we must build a movement for everyone's child, rich and poor and in between. Believe that a movement for everyone's child is simply basic American fairness. Understand as deeply as you do that the poor need more help, but the way to help them the most is to make sure everyone is included. That building a movement is never about those children, but always about our children. And I'm an old-fashioned American who believes that the American dream embraces all children because all children need the basics. And this is not the makings of a nanny state. This is not a radical thought. This is not a socialistic thought. This is an American thought.